It's the design engineering workshop, so I'm just gonna give a quick intro for our host Braden. And we'll get started. So Braden is a Swiss Army knife of design, code, and community. Has worked in both software and consulting. Systems design engineering student here at the University of Waterloo, and a host at Socratica, which is an open collective of makers, artists, founders, researchers, designers, and everything in between. He also co-created Design Waterloo, the collective of Waterloo and Murray student designers dedicated to nurturing the thriving interdisciplinary design energy in Waterloo. Great things. And yeah, Braden would also be pleased to tell you about about the endless bike paths in Waterloo.
True.
Here's Braden.
Hey. I'm gonna turn the lights off if that's chill. Are we good with that? I think the vibe is nice. Also, look at the clouds around me. They look really good. Like, what's the point of the fairy lights if it's not dark in here? So anyway, hi guys. I'm Braden, and welcome to Design Engineering and the things that actually matter in Figma. I will talk a little bit more about myself real quick, even though Ishan gave me an awesome introduction. So yeah, I'm in my second year of Systems Design Engineering here at the University of Waterloo. And on any given day, there's probably a 90% chance you'll find me riding a bike as a self-proclaimed #1 Waterloo enjoyer. I worked previously as both a software dev for the government of Ontario, working on mostly front-end things, namely making Service Ontario suck a little bit less, as well as a strategy consultant for innovation ecosystems at Northguide this past summer. Like Ishan said, I'm one of the hosts and design leads with Socratica, a movement that kind of began here in Waterloo and is sort of a spiritual successor to the hackathon. The idea is like, what if you took your passion projects and you actually worked on them for a longer time than just 48 hours? What kind of things could come out from that? And so that's been super, super cool to the point where we're all over the world at this point. And folks come from all different disciplines, from tech, art, music, writing, and everything in between, which is super, super cool. Also the co-founder of Design Waterloo, and we are home for design at Waterloo and Laurier. We maintain a directory of talent in the city, and we host cozy design events all the time. And lastly, which is actually a new thing, I'm actually the very first campus lead for Figma here at University of Waterloo. And so that means if you go, thank you. So that's super cool. We're the only Canadian school in the program, so Waterloo's taking W's as always. And so if you go to UW or Laurier, or if you're just in the area, keep your eyes peeled for some of the Figma events that I'll be running this year. Should be super fun. To preface this workshop, I want to begin with a quote from Dylan Field, the CEO of Figma. The Waterloo Eng and Design Mafia is real, and Figma is a happy beneficiary. Waterloo is a little bit of a sleeper build school when it comes to design talent. I think we're very well known because we're a powerhouse for tech and whatnot. But there's so much design here, and so really what we want to do today is like take that next leap forward and really cementing Waterloo as the place to be for design. And so whether or not you go to UW, let's continue to make this statement true today with this workshop. All right, so Figma, yeah, many of you have maybe used it before, but let's go over first what I think are its 3 biggest strengths as a design platform. Okay, so number 1, Figma is a vector editor. And so what that means, even though this might be trivial to some in the room, is that you will always have full quality in Figma. Instead of things being based off of pixels like you might find in Photoshop and you might lose quality or get blurry as things go, you'll never get blurring or pixelations with the design that you make in Figma, similar to like things you would work with like in Adobe Illustrator, for example. Everything is math-based, and so that means that can scale infinitely. This also makes it a great alternative as a general design software. So, I can't afford Adobe, but Figma is free. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that's free to you as a student in post-secondary or high school as well, and for some really, really cool things you can do with it. Number 2, you can create components. Components in Figma are elements that you can make reusable in your designs. And this is probably one of the most important things, but the next thing is probably even more important. So you can make things like a button style that you want to use on like multiple different screens, like say like a continue button, for example. You're probably using more than one continue button, and you probably want them to all to look the same. And so components do exactly that. And if you make a change to the component itself, then it changes everywhere as well. And we'll go through what that looks like a little bit later on. And number 3, Figma is a prototyping or wireframing tool. And this is where it really shines. Beyond being an infinite canvas for you to design on, Figma has very, very robust capabilities in making your prototype actually work, to the point where now you can go as crazy as like adding variables. You can add if statements, logic, and whatnot. honestly, I don't think they're far away from like becoming a full stack like design and code tool, but we'll see where that goes. So you can link your buttons to specific screens, you can trigger actions, you can simulate logic, and so much more. And you can get really, really crazy with it, which I'll show you in a little bit. And the last thing I want to define, a secret number 4, is design engineering. And this is a real superpower. The design engineering is sort of a weird term that's sort of popped up recently, but the way it's generally defined is the gray area between the worlds of design and development. So the ability for you to exist in between design and dev is something that I think is super, super powerful. And so today we're going to learn how to design with development in mind, and you'll quickly notice how we can like really bring these two worlds that are typically thought of as very separate and distant much closer together. So we'll see how to do that. Before we begin, if you have not already, I would highly recommend that you get Figma for Education. Whether you're a high school student or post-secondary, you can sign up to get full access to the professional tier. I believe this should still work if you don't have this, but it is kind of a no-brainer to get. So if you are not already on Figma for Education, this literally gives you like all the pro tools that you'll need. The one you'll probably care about the most is dev mode, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But it's kind of a steal and will also be super helpful for your hackathon experience and beyond. And so if you're a designer or a developer, would recommend getting this because it's kind of crazy that they gave this for free for us. Okay, so my goal with this workshop today is to really just help you get into the flow state of your design work and learn to think like a design engineer. To do this, we need to get comfortable with the tools. We need to get comfortable with Figma. The worst thing that you can do during a hackathon and in general is have to struggle and battle more with the tool itself, in this case Figma, rather than actually being able to focus on the challenge that your project already is providing. And so I want to bring you up to speed with the basics that you'll need to get going, and just that, because we have an hour together, and I don't want to make some like, super high fidelity prototype that looks super cool and whatnot, but it's not actually helpful to getting your project on the road. And so where we'll start with this is learning Figma's tools and the important shortcuts for them, because these are tools that will quickly become your best friends in design. You can either create a new file, or I'm about to add the link for the one that you can follow along with me. I'm going to put in the Slack because I did not get it into the thing for it. So if you guys are in the Slack, I'm going to pop this in workshop help. Just give me a second here. Design engineering Figma file. Okay, that is posted. Someone make some noise when you have access to that and that's working for you. Again, that's in hashtag workshop dash help. And then once you're in that, actually, I'm gonna maybe switch screens here. It's probably about time. There we go. Okay, I'll go over here. Has everyone gotten here at least? Are we good? Thumbs up if you are good. Okay, I'm not seeing all the thumbs up, but once you are good to go, you can go overhead and click on the top title bar here. There's a little drop-down button, and then once you get to that, there should be a thing for duplicating the project or duplicating to your files. Give me another thumbs up if you're able to do that, and that's working for you. And if it's not working for you, you can also let me know.
Guys, just a heads up, the Figma is in the workshops help channel in Slack.
Yes.
Case.
Also, yeah, you don't have to click ask to edit. You'll just be able to click on the drop down next to it, and that should bring you to duplicate the file. I'm going to deny this person, unfortunately. But it looks like people are pouring in, so that's good. Armand, man. I think people are just trolling me now. That's all right. How are we looking? Are we all set? Thumbs up? Question mark? I see a couple of them, but I'll wait until we're a little bit further along, and then I'll get started. And yeah. By the way, I'm just curious. Are you guys like trying to like stay up tonight, or is this like the night where you sleep and then tomorrow's grind time? Sleep? Grind time? Yeah, raise your hand if you're sleep mode tonight. Because I'm going to bed after this. Raise your hand if you're grind mode. Whoa, this guy's locked in. All right, how are we looking? Thumbs up if we're good. If you have a duplicated file and you're able to edit it. Is anybody like having any issues with it? Because I want to sort that out before we begin. Okay, since I'm hearing silence, I'm just gonna assume it's okay. Again, if you need any help, I'm glad to talk to you right after this. But I will go through this now, and let's just do it. So on the left-hand side here, you can join me. There's a couple of different pages. You should be able to see that. I'm gonna hop over to page 1, so I'm gonna click that, and we're gonna hop into tools and shortcuts. All right, we're looking good here. And so I will pull up the slides for this actually, and we're gonna go over a couple of the shortcuts that I think are important. Man, I need one of these. Sorry, just give me a sec. Where did this go? There we are. All right. Let's get on the move with the V key first of all. So this is the thing you're in by default. It is just the normal cursor. So this black cursor in my case, and that is just how that looks. And so the move tool is your default home base. It's your default cursor. You can use it to select objects or drag to select multiple. You should have rectangles on the side here, so I'm just going to show how that works. I mean, it's pretty simple. And you can, it's just like Google Slides. So that's just, it's a good thing to know because I think we'll be coming back to the move tool a lot. I have noticed, especially early on, that when I was starting out, I would like find myself into like some random tool and I always need a place to go back. And so this is the default tool that you should be talking about. Damn, you guys can comment on this. This is so awesome. All right, next we got drag with the hand. If you're using a laptop, which I guess all of you are, you can just use the trackpad with your 2 fingers, which is usually the best way to do things. But you can also put this is so cool. We can see everybody's hands. It's so awesome. You can do that and drag around the canvas with the hand tool that way. Alternatively, you can use your trackpad as well. Another way you can do things though is actually by holding down the space bar. So if you do that, that automatically just like toggles on and off the hand tool. I find this especially useful when you're using a mouse because that's a little bit trickier to get around since you don't have that 2-finger motion. And that's another way you can do that. A cool thing to mention about all these things is that there's a lot of overlap with these tools with other design softwares as well. So a lot of this will be similar to what you see in Adobe or in like a video editor, for example. A lot of these transfer over from Final Cut Pro, which is my video editing software sourced by for example. Next up, we've got frames. Frames are the building blocks for everything in Figma, and they are equivalent to a div in HTML. And so we can just go ahead and hit the F key. We'll hop into the frame mode. And on your copies of the file, you can just drag it out to create a frame. If anybody's having any trouble with that, just raise your hand at any point. We can talk about it since it'll be helpful for everyone, I'm sure. But that is how you make a frame. You can't do it on my file. So if you're in my file and you're trying to make a frame, you can't do that. Again, I'll ask you to click on the title of the workshop up here, not the Ask to Edit button. Click that and then, well, not in my case, but then go ahead and press duplicate to your files so you're able to try it out for yourself. But yeah, that's the way to do frames. And, you know, frames are super cool because they're sort of like the main document for everything. So I've got this rectangle. I'm just going to make it red just to show what that looks like. And so when I put it into the frame, you can see it sort of highlights blue on the outside. And even though this rectangle is like going outside the edges, it's like staying contained within that frame. So you can sort of see it's like the base element of things. And frames also have a bunch of other functionality, which is why I'm going to ask you to refrain from using rectangles. Rectangles in Figma are just shapes, whereas frames are more like your actual document area. So you can use rectangles to visualize things, but you should definitely not be using rectangles to like put text on top of, for example, as your main thing. You always want to be using frames. There's a whole host of reasons why, but the important thing is that you just know what tools are available to you. I have a little advanced section under each of these as well. So there's also other shapes. There's L for lines, which is probably an important one. So if you just hit the L key, you'll have a thing, and then you drag that out and you'll get a line like that. Change the stroke and whatnot. You can add an arrow if you want. Well, that's a little bit of a big arrow, but you get the point. You get the point. That was an accidental pun. And if you're looking for other shapes like polygons or stars, you can find them in the top left toolbar here. So everything I'm going over is pretty much accessible from here too. So if you're ever lost and you forget what the keyboard shortcut is, a lot of these are intuitive, but you can also just find them here in this case under shape tools in the top left corner. You'll have rectangle, line, arrow, ellipse, polygon, star, and images, all that sort of thing. Next up, we have text box, which is probably the second most important tool. You can make edits to the text after you write it, but I'm gonna put some text down first. Hello world. By default, this will probably be enter for you. So I'm gonna make it that. And I'm also gonna bring the font size up so you can see it. Ooh, I'm using my arrow keys to increase the font here because it's a little easier. It's also just fun to see it move in real time. So I have this hello world text. And you can see on the right-hand panel here, which is the design panel. If you have anything selected, it'll show you what properties you're allowed to edit. In this case, I have things like the tracking or the letter spacing, which adds more spacing between the letters. I personally always end up going -% on this. We have the line height, which changes the sort of how much height of the line it takes up. So for example, if I put this on 2 separate lines, you'll see that they're really close together. But if I increase that, they get closer and further. And that'll stay for everything. Your justification, obviously, middle, right. A little hard to see. Maybe we'll zoom in a little bit more. There you go. And there's a whole bunch of different things. If you are looking to be a little bit more advanced, Figma has full support for almost like all the font features. So if you're a font nerd like I am, I'm going to type this in lowercase so it's a little bit more obvious what this looks like. But these 3 dots, these hiding 3 dots here, they're lit up in blue now on the right side design panel, will actually show you all the different things you can do with the font here. So there's things like, changing the case, which I sometimes find helpful. But you can also go super, super crazy with like details, for example. Inter should be the font that you get on Figma by default. Inter is probably one of the best fonts ever created. I think it's fantastic, just because of how great it is. Like there's disambiguation, for example. You can see the L's look a little different here. There's variableness where you can like change how much slant it has, for example. You can change how thick it is. So Figma has support for all these font features. Not every app does, but Figma does it really, really well. And so that is great to see. Next up, the scale tool. And I should actually have written this like that because the scale tool is the K, but the K letter, which is sort of interesting. But this is your resizing tool. So let's bring this hello world text down here with me, for example. And let's say I want to make it bigger and I don't necessarily know what font size this is going to be. And so I don't know, maybe you think about, oh, dragging out the corner and make it bigger, but you'll see like all that does is just make the text box bigger. What if I just want to make the hello world bigger itself without just having to, go through this and like hold down my up arrow key and just let's see that happen. And so the way to do that is press K. All right, I'm in the scale tool now. And now anything I select, you'll see in the corner, there's like a big horizontal double-sided arrow there. And when you drag that, that does everything proportionally. And doesn't screw things up. And this is so helpful. This is extremely, extremely helpful. So anything you have, even like this frame itself, like I can make this a lot bigger. Like, let's see what happens if I did it in just the move tool. All that's going to do is really just screw up everything I have, which is not great. But if I hit K, then as you can expect, it just makes everything bigger. And it just kind of works like that. And you'll see like everything inside of it is probably going to be like a weird size. Like this font is now 124.91 pixels tall, which is a very weird number. But you can see how it, regardless of how much you scale something up, everything that's nested inside of it also gets that as well. Yeah, probably one of the most impactful things I've been taught in my early career using Figma. All right, C for comments. I see some people have already discovered this, but if you hit the C key, actually, maybe you can join me on my file. We can all leave like cute little messages. If you have my tab still open, we can go ahead and click anywhere on the infinite document pretty much, and we can leave a comment. Hello. Look at that. Fantastic. And you can sort of see everybody here at the same time. So that is looking great. Wow, look at all these cursors. Guys, this is adorable. Yeah, awesome. And for the advanced modification, I know people are dying to know what dev mode does, and I don't think this is a hot take. I don't think dev mode is actually going to be super useful for a hackathon project. One, because despite the name, it doesn't actually convert what you make in Figma directly into code, which I would love for it to do, but it does not. And so what it really is more useful in doing is you can access dev mode if you're on the Figma education plan, or if you pay for a professional program already by hitting the top right corner. There's like a little like HTML bracket here that's like switched. You can also just hit Shift D. I'm gonna hit that and you'll see, whoa, everything is green. But also anything that I like go over, for example, like this text box, you'll see I'll get like a little bit of like CSS styling for it. But really the cool thing you can do with dev mode that I think you're actually going to find useful is things like the annotations. And so you'll see that my top left corner here has now actually changed to a completely different set of tools. You've got a measure, you've got annotate, you've got all these things. The annotate looks like, for example. Now that I've selected that with, I think you can actually just hit Shift T as well if you aren't able to find that. You can go over anything and just say what the property is, for example. That was a bad example, but let's say like this text. I want to tell you that it is this color. And these are all grabbing from the actual properties of the thing. You can say how tall it is and all that jazz, what stroke width is applied to it, and is what this font should look like. And so if you're a dev and you don't necessarily want to attach the design side of things, all you ever need to do is be in dev mode. As a designer, you can be here, but in dev mode, for one, your devs can't break anything, so they actually can't edit. I think, yeah, they can't do anything. So you don't have to worry about, people poking in your file and breaking breaking the prototypes that you spent so much time to put together. But it also shows them super important information, like what color some specific things are. If you have variables set up, which we'll talk about a little bit more, how to get those working and all that jazz. I'm going to turn off dev mode now so we can get back to our thing and back to this. And the last thing is not something that's Figma specific, but something that I don't think enough people know. I hope a lot of people in the room do, but in case you don't, Command A or Control A. This is select all. And so what that does is it just selects everything on the page. You can see on the side here now, or in the middle of my screen as well, like I've highlighted everything in the blue, so I can move everything for one. But I think this is just a very important tool to know because regardless of where you are in your computer, like for example in this text box, if you don't have to like drag to select all that, you can just hit Command A. I'm sure a lot of you know this, but I think this is important to know in case you don't. And so that is about it for that. How are we feeling with this? Maybe we should try something that okay, actually, here's what we'll do. We're gonna go back to the slides. And I'm gonna ask you which letter to hit for which specific tool, for example. So move, if I said move, then you guys would say which letter to hit? V, yeah. All right, what happens if you want to drag around with your hand? H, yeah. Instead of rectangles, what should be the base building blocks for everything? Frames, F for frames. And again, we said R, don't use rectangles. How do you write text? E. How do you scale things up? It's spelled a little differently. The K, that's right. How do you leave comments? Yup. And then I'm not going to ask because I don't know what question I would say here, but Command A for select all, don't forget. And so you have your file, but here's all of them together. These are my top 8 big boys. These guys are awesome. I use them every day in my work. Of course, you can get super, super crazy with the keyboard shortcuts. If you really care about what those look like, you can always just hit on your keyboard command /, and that'll bring up the help tab. If you are ever trying to figure out what a feature is, or you're looking for something specific, if you're on Windows, that should just be Control/ as well. You can just search anything up that way, and it should show you the shortcut for how to do that as well. So something to keep in mind. All right, let's move on. What is a prototype? I think this is an important question to answer. So a prototype is just a version of what the thing you're trying to make looks like. I realize it's very dark in here. I'm also using Figma slides right now, which is something that has just come out. And so you can actually embed a prototype directly inside. So once I click this, it should start loading. Our Wi-Fi might be struggling a little bit, but let's try that again. If not, I'll just open it up on the side here. Please. Oh, hold on. There we go. It's loading because it's a big file. So this is the Socratica website that I've been working on for a little bit. And okay, that's working. What you see here is fully built in Figma. There is no code behind this. Everything you're seeing has been built using all the tools that I've just showed you. And so you can really start to see how crazy this can get. For example, when my mouse like enters this area, it changes all the variables to be dark mode variables, for example. Another thing you can do is, sorry, it's a little bit flashy with this. It's a little bit laggy. But you can add things like having this like scrollable left and right, so you can see all the different Socratica nodes across the world. When I hover over these buttons, you can see they inherit a different color, one for each one. And then moving in further, like you can even add logic. So I just have an if loop here, iterating through a couple different variants of the Socratica logo. So when I click it, it increases the counter by 1 and changes that. And so this is just sort of a taste of just how crazy you can get with prototypes. This is just something that I created. There are people who have done crazy, crazy things with their prototypes. I think I've seen like full video games working, which is definitely something you could do. I don't know why you would do it, but if there's logic in something, people will find a way to make it work for them. So I think now is about time to give it a go. So this is the part where you're going to follow along. I'm going to hop back into here, and I'm going to hop into the playground that's empty right now. You should see these things, which is great. And I'll go over sort of what we're looking at, and then we're good. Is everybody in this page? We're all set? In case you didn't follow that, I selected the page from the top left here under number 3, playground. And again, you should follow this in your own file so they can do it, because I'll be editing this one. But if you just want to watch me do it too, that's completely cool. Another thing I will show you guys later. Actually, I'll save that for later. But I want to show you quickly what it would look like for you to have a full set of tools available at your disposal. So on the left here, under post assets, you'll see these things that look like components, and that's because they are. You can know when something is a component when it's highlighted in purple, and we're going to make our own in a little bit too to see what that looks like. But we've got this social post, we've got this menu that pops up, presumably when I hit one of these buttons in it, and all that jazz. And so once you create a component, that'll eventually live in the assets panel. And so again, in the top left corner of your thing, you'll see we're under layers right now in this tool panel. But if we go over and switch to assets, you'll see there's a whole bunch of stuff here. And so this is the component library that we've created. This is all the things that we want to reuse in a bunch of different places. And you can see wherever there's a purple box defined with this like 4 diamond looking icon. It's on my back too, someone over there. But that is your master component. And so let's say I want to grab like a version of this social post, for example. I'll go over to local components here, and I'm going to find this social post. And I can grab that, and I can put that anywhere. I can just drag it out. I'm going to put it into this first frame here called Smart Animate Begin. It's not looking too good. I could just like eyeball this to like center it, but I'm going to do something cheeky, and I'm going to go over to the top right corner of my design panel over here. And these options over here just show you different ways to align things. So I need to align it to the center. So I'm going to click the second option from the middle that looks like a skewer almost. I'm going to hit that. And I'm going to do that horizontally as well by hitting the 5th one from the left, which aligns it to the vertical center of the frame. Cool. That's looking good. And so let's say you've built this out. What does this actually look like in practice? We can actually go ahead and test this out. So if you go over to the parent frame, the bigger one on the outside, Smart Animate Begin, I've called it because I'm alluding to something we'll do in a bit. If you click that, you'll highlight the whole frame that this is contained in. And we can go ahead and actually preview what this is going to look like. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to hit Shift Space. So if you hit Shift and Space while you have this blue outer box selected, it's going to pull up what that actually looks like. Does everybody have this screen? Are we good on this? Perfect. And so this is what a prototype could look like. It's not really too much right now, but it's got the interactions that have been built in previously. I alluded to this earlier, but you've got that overlay. So that's actually pulling directly from this, and I'll show how that works in a little bit. But you can also have things like this heart icon, which is great. You know, we're simulating Instagram here, and that's looking pretty good. Sweet. And so the way this is all actually working, though, and some of you may already know, but in the top right corner again, we've got design. but we've also got prototype. We're going to go ahead and hit prototype, and that's going to reveal a whole bunch of different things. The first thing you're going to notice is that there's this huge line that's coming across here. What is this? If you click on it, it'll show exactly what it does. It's actually opening this. But let's sort of dissect how this is even working in the first place. So we'll go over here to social posts while we're in the prototype mode. And if I just click on that, you'll see that there's a couple of things happening here. For one, I see now that there's a line here from these 3 buttons. And this is actually defining the interaction that opens it up. There's also, we noticed the heart thing earlier as well. So if I'm going to click a couple times to get to it. So I'm clicking on, as you can see, it's highlighted. It's like the bar first. And then if you double click again, then it'll highlight on the frame that's inside of it. And then again. And then when we're at this point, I'll just show you quickly. You don't have to do anything here, but you can sort of see how this is happening. So there's actually another animation that's going on here to make this happen. So this all looks pretty daunting, but I think we can actually get this done ourselves. So let's try to give this a go by creating a component of our own. I'm just going to go under here, under components that's here, and I'm going to get started, and we'll just start in our new space. So I want to create a button, for example. Let's try to create a button that's actually like on the Figma UI. So in the top right corner, I have a little blue share button, and I'm going to try to make that and I'm going to put it into this thing that we've created. So by doing that, we first need to make the building block that we need to do. And what is the building block that we need to make first for something to live in? It starts with an F. Frame. So let's make a frame. Let's hit F and let's enter the frame tool. And let's just try to drag something out in the meantime. So I'm just going to drag that out. That's probably a little big. I'm just looking at this, and actually that's not looking too bad. So, but let's have the exact right dimensions that we need. You know what? We can do something different. So I have this frame, and we're looking good here. I want to sort of mimic what the share button is doing though. So I'm going to change the background color of this. So I'm going to select the frame. If you haven't selected it already, that should be highlighted in blue, and you should see the dimensions underneath it. I'm going to go over to the right here, under fill. And I'm going to just pick a blue. And so the way to do that is just, I'm going to drag over to the blue here. And then I'm going to pick something that looks about right. That looks okay. If you really care, my hex code is 1DB7F9. But you shouldn't care, you just be able to eyeball it. And so that's looking pretty good. Next, let's create the text. How do we create the text? T. Let's do it. Hit T. And I'm just going to type it out. Share. Ooh. But this is looking kind of clapped. It's not looking exactly the way that it should. So I'm going to, instead of regular, I'm going to go over here and increase the font weight. So on the right-hand side with the text box selected, I'm going to increase this to semi-bold, looks good. And everything else looks pretty good about it too. And once we have that set, I think we need to increase this font. Maybe we'll increase it a little bit. Let's bring this up to 24 as well. That was good. All right. And now I want this text to be inside of the frame, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag it in. It's a little hard to see with the blue background, but when I did that, you can actually see that the frame actually highlights blue. Maybe if I change this frame to a different color temporarily, you can see that. You don't have to follow me here, but there you go. You can see the blue outline on the frame. Cool. But this is looking kind of weird right now. It's not exactly the right proportions I want to do. And so I'm going to show you one thing that is super awesome about frames. If we click out of the text box here and now we go back to clicking on the frame, so you've got that blue box selected on the outside, you'll notice on the right-hand side, there's a whole bunch of different options that weren't really on anything else, notably auto layout and layout grid. And we're going to click on auto layout here. So I think you can click anywhere on this thing, or you'll just have to hit the plus. I'm going to go ahead and press that. And immediately you'll see that auto layout was added. If you weren't able to find that, you can also just hit Shift A for auto layout when you have a frame selected. And so this is looking pretty good now, but you'll notice that there's a whole different host of controls going on. The one we care about right now is horizontal padding and vertical padding. So I can actually go ahead here and change this value. What this is going to do, you'll see it's going to add space on the left and right while keeping my share button nice and in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and put that at like 20. That looks good. And I have this at 16. I'm going to put it to 15. So your horizontal padding should be 20 and your vertical padding should be 15. Everyone good with that? Cool. There's also a little bit of corner rounding on that top right share button. So I'm going to mimic that as well. You'll notice that in the top right corner, again, I keep going back to this top right corner. There's lots of different tools that you've got, the coordinates of where this box is. You've got the method here. Right now, this is hugging everything that's inside the frame. I want to come down to this corner radius thing, and I'm just going to use my arrow keys here after I've clicked on the box to increase it into something that looks good. And honestly, I don't need to go that far, so I'm just going to put it at like 8. All right, this is kind of coming together. So let's actually make this work now. I'm going to go here, and first I'm going to actually rename this frame. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to double click on what is currently frame 1. You'll see there's a text box that pops up. I'm just going to call this share button. Sorry, that's really tiny, but I've just renamed the frame to share button. Are we good with that? Awesome. And then now I am going to take this and I'm going to create a component out of it. So this is a button that maybe I want to use everywhere. And so the way to do this is by going to, with the frame selected, at the very top, you see the 4 diamonds that we're now well acquainted with. And this will turn it into a component. So right now the frame selected is blue, but if I click this, it'll turn purple and you'll get the 4 diamonds on it. And so you'll also notice that on my left-hand side here in the assets panel, my share button has popped up. And that means I can grab infinite versions of it. I can grab as many as I want. But anything I change to this one, for example, if I were to change the color of the button to green, it changes on all of them. And so you can really see how this is super, super powerful. It doesn't just have to be a button. You can have full pages that are complete. You can have like a nav bar. You can have something like that, your font choices and everything. And so, yeah, that's super, super handy. But I'm just going to go ahead and delete these versions. Make sure you don't delete the main one. And we should be good to go. All right. Now that we have this component, I'm going to go and zoom out. I'm going to go back to this smart animate thing that we were working on earlier. And there we are. All right. I'm going to go ahead and grab the share button, just like I did before. Pull it out. Nice. I'm just going to put it like somewhere like under here. That was good. I'm going to align this to the middle again, just by hitting this thing in the top right corner, the one that looks like a skewer vertically. Perfect. And let's say we wanted to get onto this page. So we wanted this button to just send us to this page, for example. Simple enough. I'm going to make sure we know what this page looks like by just clicking this frame and making it a little bit different. I'm going to hit T to make a text button. I'm going to say, this is the next frame. Cool. I'm going to put that in the middle. There's guides too that'll help you do that. And let's make this work. And if you remember how to do that, that is by going through the prototype panel. So again, I'm going to go to the top right corner and I'm going to hit prototype. Perfect. And now, so instead of just revealing what arrows already exist, in this case, I'm actually going to create one of these arrows. So with the share button selected that we've just created, we can actually make this do something. You can add an interaction by being in the prototype mode and hovering over any element. Usually it's a frame you want to do this with. And then when you sort of put your cursor on the side, you'll see like there's this little like blue circle that sort of pops up with a plus. And so the way you can do that is just by heading over to any of them. I'm going to zoom out so I can see the next frame beside it. But I'm going to hold down and I'm going to drag, and now I have a nice little arrow. And you'll see it like it's like touching things, touching other frames when I get close to it. We want to get to this one. So I'm just going to hit that. And there we go. So that's looking pretty good. We've got the arrow, so it looks like when we hit this on the tap, it's going to navigate to this frame instantly. But maybe I don't want an instant transition. Maybe I love my awesome PowerPoint transitions and I'm going to do something cool. So instead of this instant version here, we're going to do something that Figma has, which is super, super cool, called Smart Animate. This will just take the context of everything and I'll make it super, super smooth, which will be helpful for our next part. I'm going to hit this. Cool. And now we're set. And also you see, once I've done this, you'll see something called Flow 1 pop up here. If you don't have that, then you can just hit the play button in the top right corner, but you should have this. I can just go over here, hit the Flow 1 button right next to it, and that'll pop up immediately with that. And let's see if our button works. If we go ahead and click on it. Oh, look at that. We managed to get to the next page. And so this is super, super simple, but I think this is something that's a little difficult to get your minds around for the first time you use Figma. But you can start to probably see just how crazy and really powerful this tool can get, to the point where you probably could create entire apps on it. If you ever get stuck in your prototype for whatever you're making, there's always this refresh button in the top right corner that'll bring you back to the beginning of the flow. In this case, it is here. Or if you just wanted to go back one slide, there's also like a back button. It works just like a browser. But this button is kind of lame. Like, it doesn't really do anything. When I hover over it, there's no indication of what's going on. What if I want to make this a button that actually indicates this? So we can go ahead and actually make that work. I'm going to close out of this preview of the prototype first, and let's try to make that happen. I mean, you can see, for example, the heart button has a lot of different versions of it. And actually, when I pop into prototype, you can see there's a bunch of arrows between them that actually dictate the animation that happens for each. And we can make this happen for the share button, and we can give it a hover state, for example. The way we're going to do that is we're going to select the share button again. And if we now look again to the top middle of our toolbar, right over here, instead of the 4 diamonds, now there's a 1 diamond. And when I hover over it, says add variant. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're going to hit that. And now there are 2 share buttons. Whoa. For the next part, I'm also going to hop back into design mode. So if you're in prototype mode like me, go to the top right corner, switch from the prototype panel here to design. And that'll be helpful for this part. And now if I select any one of these buttons, you'll see that in the right-hand side here, actually it's selected for me already, that there's a new property that's been created. And that's been created because we created this new variant. So I'm going to rename these so that it's easy to see what we're talking about here. So I'm going to rename the property. I'm going to double click on this box that says what the property name is. I'm just going to rename it to state. Cool. And so that'll affect both of these. If I hover over that, you've got, well, we'll change the names of those now, actually. So this one is state default, and this one is variant 2. That's not very helpful naming. So let's give it a proper name too. I'm going to click on the top one. Default is fine, actually. So we'll leave it at that. But for the one beneath, I'm going to click on this. And instead of variant 2, I'm going to name it hover. And I don't know, what's a good way of seeing something that's hovered? I think the best way to do it is probably just see it change in color. So let's go over to fill here with the bottom button selected. Right now it's blue. I'm just going to drag this out of the blue into the darkness here and make that like a nice gray. Cool, that's looking good. Now we've got 2 buttons, but we really haven't defined what is going to happen between them. So really all this is that if we go back to our local components on the left-hand side here, you'll see that we have a share button, and there's actually 2 versions of it. So if I click on this little arrow next to it, you'll see that there's this one and there's that one, but they're not connected in any way. So let's actually get that working. And the way we can do that is by, again, going to the prototype panel. So we're jumping between design and prototype, which is something you'll do a lot, I'm sure. Design is actually making things look good, and prototyping is actually making it work. So prototype. Cool. And let's start drawing some arrows. So just like we did for actually just making the share button go to the next page, we're going to go over here and add the hover interaction that defines how this button actually works, regardless of where it is. So I'm going to click this, the top button. Again, from the blue circle that pops up now that I'm in prototype mode, I'm going to go ahead and drag it out. I've got my awesome little arrow here, and I'm going to drag it into the frame beneath it. Cool. And now that has immediately just have this set up. So it's changing to a different state, and it's changing to the hover state. But you'll realize this is doing it on tap. I wanted to do it on the hover. And so instead of on tap, I'm going to go over here and click on the on tap dropdown. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of different things. After delay, after the mouse enters an area, but we're going to do while hovering because that's where we want to be. So we'll hit that while hovering, and that's looking good. So now if we go over to, I'm going to zoom up, sorry. I'm going to go over back to this prototype. We can hit flow 1 again now that you're in prototype mode. That'll show that. Wait for it to load for some reason. Is this my Wi-Fi again? I'm going to close that, restart it. Please. Damn, what is going on, man? Oh, man. All right, so one thing to know about Figma, it is browser-based technically, and it is in the internet, which can run into these sort of issues sometimes. I'm going to try it. Okay, there. We're getting somewhere. Cool. Now we've got this loaded, and you'll see if I hover my mouse over it, it changes to gray really smoothly. That's great. And it still works. So when we click it, it's going to the next slide too, which is great. I'm gonna hit the restart button, show you that again. We're seeing that work, and that's looking awesome. Perfect. And so yeah, you've just created your first button that you can use anywhere. It doesn't just have to be for share. For example, I can drag out another version of these buttons and have it working like that. But instead, like all this has right now is just the functionality of the hover. So when I prototype this again, when I click this, it doesn't do anything, but it does have that interaction of at least changing the color of it. So instead of share, maybe I wanted this to be like, I don't know. I'm gonna rename it to delete. And if I hit that again, you can see that that is still working. But apparently my internet is not, which is not awesome. Let me pop this out. Maybe that, whoa, that got real dark. There we go. But you'll see like that is still getting dark, which is awesome. And so this is looking pretty good. And you have successfully created your first component. And so you can now go out and create any component you want. You can add the interactions that define how it interacts with, it can change to a different variant. I'm going to pull up the Socratica prototype that I showed you earlier and show you just how crazy that can get. Where are we? Here we are. Okay, I'm going to drag that over here. I'll wait for that to load. It's going to be kind of crazy. When I hop into prototype mode, there's lots and lots and lots of arrows here. For example, I have this menu bar that's a component that's being used everywhere, and the buttons inside of it are also individual frames that are connected to have this state while they're hovering to change to different colors in another component set. And so when you have component sets and component sets, you have a real source of truth for everything that you're doing. It's worth mentioning that you don't have to have everything on one page too. Once you create components, they're available throughout your file, so you can create more and more pages, like the wall of love that's currently being worked on for all the awesome testimonials. They're still inheriting the same the top bar and all that jazz, which is super awesome. I also do this quickly, but I'll peer into like sort of what the logic in Figma can look like. So I alluded to this earlier, but that's like what the if statements can look like, for example. I didn't have time to get to it today, but there's also things like variables, for example. And so these can get super crazy. You'll see that I have like surface primary defined as primary cream. Well, like what is primary cream? Well, if we hop into the primitives here, you'll see I have a bunch of colors defined here. And I can like change any of these, and these will change everything everywhere, which is handy if you ever have to like rebrand or something like that. And so the point of this, or what my real goal here is to make you realize that maybe you think you are just a designer right now. Maybe you're a little bit scared of the dev world because you don't feel like you belong, or you feel like it's like a little bit intimidating. But you'll notice like what we've done here today in Figma is very, very similar to the way that a dev is actually going to be able to implement this. Creating the different states of this, defining the interaction that happens between it. When we get to variables, which you can talk to me after if you're interested in how that works, the way we are tokenizing these to, first, like we just say what the color is, and then we have a hex code directly. But then in the token itself, it's actually grabbing that color and it's using it in multiple different places. Like it's using it for the surface, it's using it for the text color. We've got accent colors and all of that. And there's light and dark mode. You'll realize that the world of doing these sort of things in Figma and the world of actually implementing it as a dev are not as far apart as you think. Figma is doing a lot of good right now in improving this into really getting parity between that world. With dev mode too, you can start to see how that is getting even better. We've got, like I mentioned earlier, like the text where you can see annotations and what token to grab. That is exactly how a developer is going to implement it on their side. And so it might be a little bit much to set up for your hackathon project, but I think what I really want to get to you with is that, again, if you feel like you're just a designer, if you were able to follow along on this workshop, you are already more than that. You are thinking like a developer. You are thinking like a design engineer. Don't be afraid to code. I think it's a great skill to learn. And if you're able to really be the bridge between both worlds, that is a super awesome superpower that you have, and you can do it. If you're a developer and you're learning to design, you also can. The worlds are not as far as you think they are. Yeah, I guess I'll get to the end there. I guess that's design engineering and the things that actually matter in Figma. Thank you.